Mark, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Pray podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
So, can you give myself and the audience a little bit of background about who you are and what you do? And then I got some questions because you've been doing what you've been doing for a very long time.
Yes, yes. Well, I am a psychic entertainer, or a mentalist. I have many years of background in standard magic. My grandfather was a magician. So when I was very young, like 5 or 6 years old, uh, when I started to be curious and care about things a little bit. I was always his guinea pig. My parents would leave me there uh, for him to babysit me, and he had this cigar box full of little magic tricks and wire puzzles and curious things, you know. So after getting to know him a little bit, I realized this guy's pretty cool. He's a wizard, you know. I mean, I didn't even know what that was, but he entertained me, and by entertaining me, he inculcated a skepticism that things are not always the way you think they are, and magic is a great way to learn that
Hmm.
because it's misdirection, it's verbal deception. A lot of those things come into play later on when you become a professional. But as a child, I was just totally engrossed by the colors and the objects and the vanishing and the appearing and all that sort of thing. It really, really caught my eye. So I stayed with magic. I don't know, I was probably 6 or 7 years old when I got my first magic set. And, I tried to become Mr. Magic and I got a cape and everything. But I was too young to really keep kids under control. They'd come and see my shows and they'd be throwing rocks at me and stuff. So when you're that young, you really have to learn from the ground up about how to control an audience, how to pick the right people, that whole thing. So I learned really fast that maybe magic was not working out for me because any magic is a power trip. Let's face it. And when you're like 9 or 10 years old and you're trying to tell people that you have magical powers, especially kids who are the same age, you can have a lot of resistance. So I kind of left it aside for a while. I got into rock and roll and got into art. And then when I was in art school, my I went to Cal Arts, which was a really nice art school to go to. And my mentor was John Baldessari, if anybody knows who he is or was. He just passed away about a year ago. John was a conceptual artist, and I got mixed in with this group that's called post studio art. Post studio art meant you don't have to have a studio, you don't need an easel or paints. It's kind of more up here. It's performance art. It's getting out in the street and doing weird things, attracting attention, happenings. Alan Capro, who kind of coined the term happenings, he was one of my teachers as well. So I was in this kind of strange wonderland where the art school didn't really want to call it art. There are several different schools at Cal Arts, and the theater school didn't want to call it theater. But I really liked getting out in the street, and I literally was a starving artist, and a bunch of theater students and myself finally formed a group that was called the Rainbow Magic Theater. And it just so happened that right across the freeway from Cal Arts at that time was a place called Magic Mountain. So we approached them and we said, "Hey, this is called Magic Mountain. Where's the magic?" And they were like, "Hmm." So we managed to convince them that they needed to have uh, street performers doing magic. And that opened up a whole new thing where I started making good money. I worked with very creative people. I learned how to juggle, how to get a crowd, how to work a crowd, how to work surrounded, which is different than a lot of magic. And I really had a blast. And it was really the first time I ever made any money with magic. And I never looked back after that. I still made art, but my money was coming from street magic
Hmm.
and learning how to uh, entertain. you know. So then when I finally graduated Cal Arts, I uh, I worked at a place called Hollywood Magic Company, which was at that time the biggest magic store this side of the Mississippi, and had an incredible stock and incredible working people who were working there because it was Hollywood. And the only other place to go to was the Magic Castle. So I learned some stuff, had some very good teachers. I was really lucky to have good teachers. That's number one. And so I applied to the Magic Castle, and I got accepted as a performing member. That was in 1975. So uh, I just finished another week there, believe it or not, after a long time of not doing it because I
Yeah.
moved out of LA. Uh, so during that time, I had teachers who were telling me, you got to understand the difference between magic and mentalism, because mentalism, people want to believe in it.
Hmm.
And if they want to believe in it, it's not like, you have the green handkerchief and you put it in your hand and the red handkerchief comes
Yeah.
out. I mean, it's pretty and people are like very clever, but there's no reason for it to happen. Now, with mentalism and telepathy and clairvoyance and telekinesis and all those wonderful things we got into in the 60s, thanks to Uri Geller, uh, people were really curious about it. And I was myself. So my better teachers kept kind of pushing me towards that. And that led to me becoming a medium at the seance room at the Magic Castle. They have a Houdini seance room. So I took on that job. I really wasn't too sure about what I was going to do, but it didn't take long before I listened to some old radio shows and watched some old movies and started to develop a character. Okay. And I had a blast. I mean, that for me was the best room for me to work in at the castle because it was like a 50-minute play. It was my own room. I could pretty much do whatever I wanted, which led to some
Hmm.
interesting things, of course, because as I worked the room, I started to realize that when you have that persona of being a medium or somebody who is in touch with supernatural, spiritual forces, people, even though they know it's called the Magic Castle, they expect you to be able to do certain things. So what would happen is I would be chatting people up before the show or after, and they would say, "Can you read my palm?" Or they would say, "Do you read tarot cards?" And it didn't work to just say, "No, I don't do that stuff," because you were expected to know at least a bare bones idea about what's going on with that. And I didn't have a clue.
And you had to
But
be in character.
yeah, I had to be in character, and I like to stay in character because that's what my mentors told me to do. You don't go out of character till you go home. So that led to hanging out in some of the Hollywood occult shops and meeting some readers and some people who did that. And one of my mentalist teachers, Jules Lanier, who was just a genius, he did readings, and I watched him doing readings, and I realized this guy was making 3 times as much money as I was making as a magician. And he was so relaxed and casual. He had a cigarette holder. This is when you could smoke in clubs, and very debonair with an ascot tie. And he would just lay the cards out, and people would line up to talk to him. And he would go home with 300 or 400 bucks a night. And I was lucky if I made that in a week, you know. So I said, "Hey, Jules, do you think it might be time for me to kind of cross over a little more into this darker path?" And he said, "Sure, but don't blame me for what happens later." So then we start a whole new segment of my life where I got further and further away from standard magic and more into human nature and the need to believe in just the most whacked out stuff imaginable.
Hmm.
And I like that because you could say just about anything. And if you had a way to make it so you could be right and wrong at the same time, people went away smiling and they were happy. Then they go to someone else and say, "Hey, that guy was really accurate." I was just making shit up. But after a while, I learned the right things to say, which leads into the next phase, which I needed to make some extra money because I got married. And that was during the 900 phenomenon. I'm sure you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, you could be at home, you could work as many hours as you want. All you needed was a telephone and a place to talk to people. So I started doing that to make some extra money. That's in my book. By the way, my book is called Psychic Blues. And you're going to find out why it was called that. Did you read it by any chance?
I have not. I'm going
Yeah,
to be
so
reading
there's a
it.
fairly thick chapter on it's called the 900 years because then I really immersed myself in that world and I realized a lot of things happen as after I started rubbing shoulders with so-called mediums and psychics, which
So,
I
so, so
did.
let's take a moment here for those that are maybe a little bit younger than you or I.
Yeah,
What are you referring to for the 900 years?
the 900 years was there used to be a company called Psychic Blues. I'm sorry, Psychic Friends Network, and it was a TV ad, an infomercial that ran late at night, and it would have and that wasn't Miss Cleo. This is before Miss Cleo, but it would have various psychics and what was their name, Dionne Warwick, and they would trumpet out people who they would say, "This is my psychic," and people would get on and say, "Just dial 1-800," and people were doing it. And it started off with maybe 30 psychics, ended up, I think they had like 2,000
Wow.
psychics. And this was $3.99 a minute. And I got 25 cents a minute out of each of those calls. So it wasn't really a moneymaker, but it allowed me to really dig my feet in because when people were paying $3.99 a minute, they cut right to the chase.
Yeah.
Like today's psychics just ask question after question after question until they find a way to get the hook in. That particular instance, you're on the telephone and you can't get any tells from the clothes they're wearing or the shoes they have on or their jewelry or the standard psychic stuff. You've got to be quick on your feet. And they're even quicker because they don't want to pay any more than they have to. So I learned to do this dance, to be very quick on my feet, and the gift of gab, all that stuff. I made lots of notes. I made uh, uh, on computer. I made many of the things that end up in the Psychic Blues book because they were just so incredible. I couldn't believe the things that people were telling me. And at first, they would just want like a standard reading. But then after we talk for maybe 2 minutes, they'd say, okay, never mind that. Here's what's really going on. And they'd cut to the chase. And of course, me being the so called expert, they would tell me these stories and they would say, okay, so what should I do?
It's almost like you've gone from psychic to therapist.
Oh, it was definitely the poor man's therapy. But what was the most fascinating about it for me and why I stayed in it for probably longer than I should have was because they had a way for the psychics to change their profession. In other words, one week you could be a tarot reader. If you wanted, you could switch over and be a runestone reader the next week, or you could be a ghost hunter. Now, that really interested me because people would call up and they would tell me these ghost stories. Oh my God, I would be sitting there by the fireplace. I had a really nice house with a fireplace with the lights off, and I'd be listening to these people spin these tales. And I'm thinking, they're spending $3.99 a minute. Why would they lie to me? You know,
Yeah.
unless they're just crazy. And a lot of them did not sound crazy at all. They were having these experiences, and of course, again, me being the expert, they tell this whole long thing, 20 minutes long, and they say, "Okay, explain that." So I mean, whoa, I really got some information to work with there, and it was helping me with my seance work and the other things I was doing as well. So again, that's all in the past because I got enough information after more years than I should have. Finally, writing this book because I took all the information and I made it into a tell-all book. Okay, which is also, by the way, an audio book I highly recommend uh, because it will tell you the secrets, a lot of the secrets about what has been going on and what is going on now. Only now it's governmental and all sorts of other conspiracy things. You know, back then it was unusual and people did not so easily fall prey to a lot of these things. You know, they just wanted lotto numbers or, and I learned right away, never take medical or legal questions.
Yeah.
Never. Just tell them basically not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear, whether they like it or not. So that took some hard work, but it led me into, and also at the same time I was getting involved with, because of Uri Geller and some other performers who were doing some pretty amazing things. It led me to the skeptics groups because my idea was, if, and again I still had some kind of high hopes in my mind back when I was young, you know, if anybody was going to find something that was real, it wasn't going to come from the believers. It was going to come from the scientists and the skeptics and the people who were tasked with using rational thinking, and that was it. You know,
Hmm.
the thing of it was at that time when I kind of transferred over to the skeptic community from the magic community, uh, they were getting fooled pretty bad. The scientists, you know, a lot of them up north in San Francisco at Stanford and all that, they bought into all that stuff. And that's where I met Randy because I started talking to him. So Randy's been, God, I miss him. He's been such a turning point in my life because we could talk magic like I could talk magic with him like nobody else. And he knew exactly what I was doing. And it didn't bother him. It bothered a lot of people in the skeptic community because I was playing both
Hmm.
sides. You know who Randy is?
I do not know who Randy is.
Oh my God. Okay, well, the amazing Randy. He was a professional escape artist, very popular back east. He uh, he got onto this psychic thing, and also he exposed Peter Popoff, who was a faith healer. He decided that he'd had enough of the scoundrels and the charlatans, and so he started a group called the JREF, the James Randi Educational Foundation, and that's how I met my girlfriend. We both were involved with that. And it was very enlightening because it opened a lot of doors that I didn't even know were there because I was able to now rub shoulders with science, you know, and all magic is science. Not all science is magic, but all magic is science. And once you deal with optical illusions and sensory things and misdirection, the whole thing opens up and you see things differently. I think the main thing I learned from Grandpa was when you see something in this hand, what's the other hand doing?
Yep.
And
Whenever I
and
watch a magic show, I'm always
yeah,
trying really hard to not look where they're trying to get me to look.
right, like the beautiful assistant with the fishnet stockings. No, 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 no. You know, that's exactly where they want you to look, you know. So once you've learned that and you teach magic, I taught magic for 10 years, you realize that that is a way of life. It's not just a way of thinking. And that's why it led into scams and all these hot and cold readings and all these stings that Susan and I do, is because it's just a performance, folks.
Hmm.
There is no supernatural aspect because if there was, that person would be the most dangerous person on the planet. Think about it.
Yep.
I mean, seriously, they make these claims and they do these things. They would be, I always say, said it 100 times. If they really had even one of the powers that they profess to have, they would be locked up in a concrete bunker, and the NSA and the CIA would have their brains wired up to find out exactly how they're doing this. This whole thing with remote viewing, this and that, it's all a big ripoff. So
So,
I don't pretend to know everything, but I do have my opinions based on, 43 years of digging into this stuff. And I still have an open mind, but anecdotes are not evidence. I've got to see real evidence. And I've tested people. Both Susan and I tested people when we worked for the IIG. It was called the Independent Investigations Group out of CFI.
so does your background in the industry make you a better investigator in looking at people's claims because you know the tricks, the
What to look for?
techniques, what to look
Yeah.
for?
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, I can still be fooled by the simplest trick. But one of the things we learned when we worked for the IIG, and this was about what, 6 years, Susan? She's not saying. 6 years, we made protocols and we tested people who made paranormal claims.
Mhm.
And my job, just to take off from what you said, my job was to act as the magician and watch for any sleight of hand, any movement, anything that did not fit with the protocol. And they were pretty stiff protocols because at that time, uh, Amazing Randy and JREF had a $1 million prize for anybody who could prove something paranormal.
I remember that. I do remember.
Yeah. So you had to pass a preliminary test. If you passed that, then it was pretty serious business, pretty serious. So the group that we were with, we had a $150,000 challenge. It wasn't quite as hefty as Randy, but we had plenty of claimants. Remember this, we were in Hollywood and there's a nut on every corner in Hollywood and they all think they can levitate or do this or do that. So we'd say, oh, okay, and a lot of them would fall through the net right away because we would say, okay, what is it you do? And they would say, well, I'm psychic. I'm like, and what does that mean? Well, we'd say, what can you do that we can test? So a lot of them, that was it. They couldn't do anything. But then there are other people who really had a claim, and both of us agreed on that claim in writing, all of the group, the IIG, with the claimant, and then we tested them. So to get
So,
back to what I was saying, I'm sorry, what are you going to
so,
say?
so, so what would be one of those claims? I know the future, or I know what you're. I can tell what you're
Oh,
thinking. Those sort of. Let's pick
we
pick
don't
one.
have time for that.
But those sort of things.
Well, the classic one is finding water with a bent twig.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not too hard to test somebody on that. And each time we would, so again, my ego was so invested in this that I was the psychic investigator and I was going to use my skills as a magician. I never used my skills as a magician. You know why? Because nobody ever tried to trick anybody. These people believed that they could do it.
So,
And
so,
it was sad. After 6 years, it was sad to be involved with them because it was like, let's poke the crazy guy with a stick
so,
and then
do you, so,
drag it
so,
out.
so, for most of the people, you really think that they genuinely believe that they had these abilities,
I think,
and that it wasn't a shtick or just an attempt to try to fool you.
no, they couldn't fool us. We had a team of people who one person would watch one hand, one would watch the other hand. We tested them for real. Now, uh, let me give you my what do you call a pie chart? I always remember that name, Enneagram or something. Not a mammogram. Anyway, the way I divide the pie up is I say, and this is, again, I'm going to state this to everybody who's listening. This is my experience. It doesn't have to be yours. I'm just telling you what I experienced. 95% of the people who are out there calling themselves psychics are charlatans and they know that they're lying to you. They're professional business people or not professional business people who are making a living off your superstition. Has nothing to do with anything spiritual. Now, that's 95. The other 5%, if we break it down, and I have, the 2.5% and 2.5%, the first 2.5% are people who are, they genuinely believe they have powers.
Hmm.
And this could be for a lot of crazy reasons. You know, they could be off their meds, they could be demented, they could be crazy, just plain crazy, but other than that, that's their flaw. They have like a blind spot.
Hmm.
And other than that, they're fairly normal people, most of them. So that's 2.5%. Then the other 2.5%, my favorite percentage, is people who are kind, compassionate, very intuitive, very sensitive people who just know shit because they've learned to listen to their intuition, or they've developed a way of coping with the world for a variety of reasons, which allows them to dip into things that normal people don't think about. I like to use the example of if you go, you used to be able to go to a sideshow and there'd be a gypsy woman at her little table, and she would have her crystal ball and her tarot cards, and she's got the babushka on. What's that? Oh, I'm not supposed to say gypsy. I am sorry. We'll call her a street performer. That's so less romantic. But so she's there, and she is. You sit down, and she starts telling you amazing things. Say she's 80 years old.
Hmm.
She starts telling you all these things about yourself, and you're just like, how does she know that? Well, think about it for a minute. She's 80 years old. She probably learned how to do that from her mother, who learned it from her grandmother, who learned it from somebody. It's a way of life.
Hmm.
So if you've done thousands and thousands of readings, why are we surprised that those people might know that you have a scar on one leg or whatever?
Because
You know,
everybody has a scar on one leg.
I have one on both legs. So, so once you understand that and you can separate it out and say, well, it's like, I'm not going to play the 3 card Monty with this person. I'm going to just learn from them some of their skills, if you want to call it that. So that's basically what I've been focusing on. And Susan and I are now actively involved in stinging these most egregious psychics, which have now moved on to Zoom because they can make much more money. And because of COVID, uh, before they would have to rent out a huge hall at a hotel and pay for it. And now they've got Zoom, and my name is right there in the lower left-hand corner. So if you want to do a Zoom reading and you charge people $150, all I have to do is have another screen right over here, and I just Google or put your name in Facebook, and suddenly I see a dog. I mean, that's what a hot read is. So a cold read is old school. A cold read is when you pretend to know all about people, even though you've never met them.
Hmm.
And you still have to have some skill at that to be able to be a true charlatan. I mean, you got to be able to be a performer. That's number one. So, and then once you get into hot readings, which is how it's all done today, most of it, it's just incredible. So we try and stay one step ahead of the hot reads and then blow it back on the psychic later.
So,
They don't
so,
like that.
so for the psychics, are they most like when they're doing these things on Zoom? Are they usually doing like large groups of people so that they have
Yes,
more unique names that they can, it's it's
exactly.
it's
They
it's
don't
not
pick
it's not
names.
Chris Parker. It's something that's going to
No,
be
it's
unique
not
and
going to
easy
be
to
Chris
find.
Parker because there's a billion Chris Parkers and they need to pick a strange name or something that sounds a little different, and then they might get a bite in the moment, because
Hmm.
it's all done now in the moment. In the old days, it would be done before the show. That's what's called pre-show, which I love. I love pre-show.
So how
But
does the pre-show work?
pre-show is you before a show, like when you'd have a big audience, a mentalist would. I don't want to reveal any trade secrets, but you find ways of getting information on particular people in the
Hmm.
audience, and you know where they're sitting, and they don't think that they gave you anything. But then you stand up and you, this gentleman with the red sweater on,
So
he's
you could
wondering
have a coworker working the room beforehand, just talking to people. Hey, how did you hear about this show? Oh, hey, what do you do? Just
in the green room,
yeah.
where people are lined up waiting to get in. You just have somebody dressed in street clothes, and you go, "Wow, I can't wait to get in touch with my grandmother. Who do you want to get in touch with?" I mean, the methods are endless,
Yeah.
and they're so nefarious and so. Ugh, I mean, I do not like mediumship at all for what it does to people, but I love the tricks.
It's you love the entertainment aspect of it and people that understand it's
It's not
entertainment.
entertainment. See, I want to correct you once in a while, because making someone break down in tears on television
Yeah.
is not entertainment.
Yeah.
That is a
Oh,
manipulation of
yes,
that
yes.
person's emotions.
It's I didn't finish my sentence. It's the entertainment value of everybody knows that this is theatrical versus somebody thinking that this is real and being duped.
Yeah, but the people who pay for the tickets that are sometimes $200, $300, guess what? You
Yeah.
know, they don't think that it's not real. Otherwise, they'd go see a movie or something. So the sadness for me, that's why my book is called Psychic Blues, is because I like the idea of psychic entertainment because of the artifice of it.
Hmm.
Because I learned magic, and magic is, you can do a trick and say that it's done with sleight of hand, and it's, that kind of magic is spelled Magic, or you can go Magick, and it goes into a whole other realm of magic, but it's still a trick. So very frustrating, because we've seen people who mix the two, and they don't see the difference between a mentalist and a psychic. Maybe I should slow down and tell that. A mentalist is in a theater in a proscenium arch most of the time.
Hmm.
That is his disclaimer.
Yeah.
And when he walks off the stage, like Darren Brown or somebody like that, it's over, you know, and he doesn't want to see you backstage. But a psychic will even make a statement like, if you liked what I told people, come and see my lady at the back of the room and sign up for a reading.
Yeah.
Because the only reason that psychic is doing that show is to get that hook in.
It's lead generation.
It's what?
Lead generation from the
Yeah,
business world. It's marketing.
yeah. Because then how many times have I heard the medium or the psychic, when everybody's gone home? Oh man, look at this. We got enough readings here to last into the next month. They don't care about that show. The show was just a performance to advertise for what they're offering. And so it goes.
Hmm.
Question?
Yeah, so I was curious of like the with the skills I'm going to refer to as skills, the skills that you have learned over the last.
Questionable, isn't it?
I, no, it's a skill. It's a soft skill.
Yeah.
Reading people, learning mannerisms. Do you
Body
body
language.
language? Do you find that I don't want to say inadvertently, that you are effectively reading people just when you're out in public and having conversations with people?
Absolutely.
That is just it's kind of an always on skill set.
Yes. The police call it, you were just talking about it the other day. What do they call it, Susan? Situational
Yeah.
awareness. When a cop goes into a restaurant, where's the first place he looks? Where are the doors? Where are the exits? So you develop this mindset where you can't help it, but you don't. you're not like Teresa Caputo, where you go up to somebody in a salon and go, "Oh, your poor brother, I'm so sorry he passed away." Those people on that show sign waivers. She didn't just walk into that
Yeah.
store. And when they sign a waiver, they've got the person's name. They just go into another room and they can use their phone and get information on that person. So the so-called reality shows make it look like they just stroll in and like, oh, I'm getting my hair done, and oh, I get a dark feeling about you. Think about it, folks. Use your common sense. It's a TV show. They edit, and that's another thing. You know who the
Yeah.
real magician is? The editor.
Yes.
They probably tape for 3 hours and just to make a 20-minute piece that makes them look really good. Sizzle reel.
So I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this questions, but do you see people differently because of your experience of either being a skeptic or the background in
I
cold
don't I
reading?
don't know if I can agree to that because I don't know shit anyway. I, I hate to say that, but the older I get, the more I realize I don't really know anything. It's just like learning a magic trick. I may know one magic trick that might fool you, but it doesn't mean I know all people.
Hmm.
I mean, I can generally tell when people are lying to me because of I've read books on body language and I've known other people that have given me some insight into that. But the real sociopaths can still slip by. They absolutely can. And Susan will tell you if you talk to her that I still fall for scams. I just I just fell for this thing where they said you can get this new charger that charges your phone in less than 15 minutes. Have you heard about that?
Yep, I have.
It's bullshit. And I had to get my money back. And she is always shaking her head like, you still can fall for these things. So, if I was really in tune, if I was really the super mind, I would not be stumbling around,
Well,
which I am.
is it just the same reason why people fall for psychics? Is because they want to believe it. You wanted a
I want
charger
my
that would
phone to
charge your.
charge up
You wanted your
faster.
charge
Yeah.
phone in 15 minutes. I have found a problem to
Yeah.
my solution. Isn't that the same in the same way what the charlatans are offering? I can give you advice about
Right.
tell you about this because it's what you want.
Right. But the thing that makes it a little bit different and the same in some ways is that if I had stopped and looked at some of the ratings
Yeah.
of that psychic or that phone charger, I would have not given him my credit card information. I just was in such a hurry. Oh, I got to have this. Susan, this is great. I can charge my phone in 15 minutes. She's like, what? She's much more of a skeptic than I am. That's, I should tell you.
Like, okay, so here's a question about that. Do you find that people who once they believe in the mediums and whatnot, that even if you tell them and show them 100 reviews that they're a scam, they're still going to believe it because you're just attacking this person because you're jealous
Yeah,
or whatever. It's because they so much want to believe.
that's why our job is so hard because I mean, back when I was a mentalist and I was working in the seance room, you know, and this was at the Magic Castle. There's a big sign in front of the Magic Castle that
Magic.
says Magic Castle. It doesn't say Shanti's ashram or anything. I do a seance, and afterwards, people would come up to me and they would say, how did you develop your powers? And I would say, I read a lot, which is true. I finally had to think of a way where I could be honest and say the truth. But and I learned that because if I told people, if I said that was just this goofy rubber hand, and they go, they'd be pissed off at me for challenging that. They would say, well, you know, I could see how some of those things you did were tricks, but that one thing you did had to be real. So another thing we have experienced over the years, which circles back to why it can be very frustrating to be in this realm, is that, yeah, people, they don't like to be told that they're wrong. That's why there's no really good skeptic television show anywhere.
Yeah.
Hey, where's where's the truth? People don't want the truth. They want to believe, they want to be left alone. And if you step on them or you take away their belief system, they don't like you,
Yeah.
which we found is more common here in America than in the other countries we've been to. Other
Interesting.
countries we go to, people laugh out loud. They're so happy that what we're doing is going on. And they are generally atheist in nature. Once somebody's dead, they're dead. Leave them alone. What is all this? But in America, man, people will they'll start crying. It's awful. It's horrible because you are destroying their illusion. And unless you've got something to replace it with, and I don't, then they are going to go away saying, those skeptics are they're awful people. What do they call us? Brown moles or something?
You're just mean.
They call, they call us the latest article on Susan, or it was from a long time ago. These people, Paranormal Daily, was that it? Yeah, you should read the Paranormal Daily article on psychics. They called us dirty mole rats.
Aw.
I happen to like moles, so it didn't really bother me. But I mean, where does that come from? I'm just trying to help you, you know?
So do you see like more and more psychics out there, more people trying to take advantage of the population with these techniques than in the past? Has it, or is it
Yeah,
still? You
it's
think it's
it's
about the same amount of
exponentially
people?
growing. It's exponentially growing
Mm.
as people see that they can get away with it. And by the way, I'm making this videotape. I don't want any of you people to go out and start doing this. This is not the school for scoundrels here.
No, no,
We
no, no, no.
we are for truth and justice. So if you want to do it, fine. But I'm going to tell you right now, I will warn you, it is the lowest form of humanity that I have ever had any connection with. And it's not an easy lifestyle. People think, oh, you're a psychic. You must be rich with all your lotto numbers and everything.
Yeah, that was always my biggest question. If you're a psychic and you know the winning lotto numbers, why aren't you retired?
Yeah. Well, I used to say in my show, I would say, one of my disclaimers would be if I could really do this, I'd be at the racetrack. I wouldn't be standing in front of a bunch of drunk people. And they were like, wow, I never thought of that. Well, why don't you think of that? But I stopped doing that too because it was too wise guy style. And we're trying to be more gentle in our approach, which could be a mistake, but we're trying to say to people who are believers, look, we just want to understand, you know, if you have something that you can show us, we'd like to see it. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
sure.
So as we wrap up here, where can
Yes.
people find you online? And let's get the name of the book one more time. And of
Okay.
course, everybody can find it at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, anywhere that you can
Well,
download, upload. No.
you can buy Psychic Blues on Amazon, or you can buy it from me at my website, which is www.themarkedward.com. And I highly recommend it as a starter. I have about 10 other books that are out there, but they're mostly for mentalists and magicians and people who are already familiar with this dodgy area that I work in. Uh, and I do want to say that after a couple of years, when I first wrote Psychic Blues, I took it to the publisher and the publisher liked it, but he edited about a third of it out, Feral House Books. And I don't know if you ever heard of them. And I just wanted to get the book out. So I said, yeah, fine, whatever. But then I read it and it made me look really bad, which which was the point to show how low a psychic is. But there was really no nuance. There was no, what was going on in my marriage? What were my influences? What was I drinking? Those sort of things people want to know.
Hmm.
So I reverted back to the original manuscript and I did an audio book. which is available on Audible. And I highly recommend that. Get both because you'll need one to read and one to listen to and pass on to your grandma or whatever. But I highly prefer the audiobook because it's funnier, it's darker. By the time I got to the second round of recording it, I just was so sick of the whole book that my attitude comes off as a little bit more edgy. And I think that helped. And we added some sound effects and some music cues, and we made a lot of fun things out of it. So that's available at Audible, and they've been giving it away for free for months and months now if you have a membership. So I highly recommend that. Um, what else was I going to say?
And you're narrating it yourself. Oh,
Yes,
that's always, I always enjoy when authors narrate their own work.
that's why I'm
It's
saying
so much better.
the tone after, having to reread it, narrate it the second time. I just wanted to get it over with. So what was the other thing you asked? That's the,
Find
oh,
you online, yeah.
you can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. I'm usually on there every day. I hate to say that, posting all sorts of strange things. And Susan and I are, well, we have some projects in mind, and we are going to be continuing to throw out the bait for these. Yeah, we've done several things. We always name them after a food item. Like the first one was ice cream cone. We did Operation Onion Ring, Operation Tater Tot, and they're all listed and on her site. And some of the most egregious stuff we've been able to not stop these people, but they sure are aware that we're out there and they don't like it.
Expose them.
Well,
Well, not
some
the
of
right
them,
word.
yeah, some of them we let people figure it out for themselves, which is much more effective.
Yeah.
We say, here's some breadcrumbs. You decide, you know. And this whole hot reading thing. I mean, just real quick, the latest, most egregious thing, we won't mention any names, was one medium set up online on Zoom a spirit circle for 5 to 12-year-olds.
Oh,
Yeah, oh, that's what we said. And but we did our number on it. And you can read about that if you go to abouttimeproject.org.
aboutchimeproject.org.
And it's called Operation Onion Ring.
Okay,
It'll make you cry.
we will link that in the show notes. Oh, I'm scared about this now.
I know. Can you imagine? I mean, that is child abuse as far as we're
Oh,
concerned.
okay. So were these kids there themselves, or did their parents put them on there?
Of course, their parents put them up to it.
Oh,
And guess
oh,
what? It was $400 per
oh my
child.
goodness. Oh,
But we snuck three of our own people in there. I'm sorry, two of our own people. And the psychic medium fell right into it and just buried himself. So
good
that's
riddance.
the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's okay. I have some reading, some listening, and some watching to do, I think.
Everybody, come on, do something.
Everybody does.
Yeah. I mean, this is what is it called? You're called prey. What is it?
The
Easy.
Easy Prey podcast, because we don't want our listeners to be easy prey.
I mean, this is perfect for that. I mean, I thought it was like some kind of biblical oven cleaner or something. But you're in a position to really make a difference. So come on, aren't we tired of being lied to?
Yep.
Yeah,
We
so I'll leave it there.
education and awareness and help people out.
Situational awareness. Just don't be such a chump. You know?
So that's a great tagline for the episode. Situational awareness. Don't be such a chump.
Really. I mean, we just wake up in the morning and there's always something on the news that we just do a head slap, because it doesn't seem to be getting better. And we try to keep a glib surface, but
Hmm.
it can be really wearing.
Yep.
So
No,
anyway, I'm glad you had me.
I totally understand your position and how it feels, and I super appreciate your time this afternoon.
So if you will, thanks, folks, and then send me the